your boy Drip Sauce, and moving straight to the point, I'm going to be debunking a guy named KeyCorp who supposedly debunked our out-of-versal Goku scales. So before we go into the video, if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, and let's get straight to the point.
Since a lot of people have been trying to highball Dragon Ball to 5-dimensional and outer-versal recently, I'm going to be debunking misconceptions and Greek arguments that anyone with a brain and 5 minutes of research can debunk for themselves, although I will also include things other than dimensionality.
First thing is, when we scale Dragon Ball, we don't really highball it. We go through preponderance of evidence and things that are hidden from plain sight in the source material in order to upscale the cosmology via realistic scales. If you don't understand it, it's your fault. And second of all, this nigga has over 200 subscribers and he sounds like a fucking NPC from a lame-ass game. I don't know how his subscribers even hear what he says. Let's move on.
Hyperbolic time chamber is not infinite, nor is it as big as the universe. It's been directly stated to be only about as big as the Earth, and that's installed.
This is the stupidity of an individual who doesn't understand anything about perspective-based statement. It's a statement from Goku, who would have no real inherent knowledge on the structure or the size of the hyperbolic time chamber, and he says it's supposed to be as big as Earth, not that it is, so it doesn't create a necessity for certainty in this case, and it would contradict multiple other things within the series, like characters way beyond planet level. This is massively lowballing, by the way. I can get them to higher dimensional pretty easily. These characters are way beyond planet level, and they need space-time rifts to tear through space and time to get out of the hyperbolic time chamber. Vegeta literally needs to break the whole dimension to get out of the hyperbolic time chamber. So why is this relevant? That's literally the dumbest point I've ever heard in my life, that it's just as big as Earth. People just don't know the series. This guy just thinks he has, oh, I know Dragon Ball, blah, 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 blah. He just thinks he's going to debunk me. Nah, I'm not going to let that slide. I'm not going to let that slide. You literally need to just watch this series. You don't understand what perspective-based statements are. You just go off what Goku is assuming. Like, why does Goku have any inherent knowledge on it? Did you prove that Goku has any inherent knowledge on this? No. So that point is debunked.
It's only ever called a universe in a fan translation. The official translation only calls it a dimension. And even if it was called a universe, that doesn't speak for its size.
It doesn't have to say a universe. I just have to prove that characters who can't break through it with their raw power or need to rip space-time to get out of it scale above universal plus, which is pretty easy to do. So I don't have to prove that it says universe. I just have to prove that the characters scale above universal plus and then can't break this, which would actually upscale the hyperbolic time chamber to higher dimensional, and potentially even higher, based on what you scale the cosmology to.
The dead zone is not 5-dimensional. A hyperspace can refer to any dimension that is higher than a 3-dimensional space.
The dead zone is absolutely higher dimensional, and the definition you use for hyperspace is one of the many definitions for hyperspace, and it isn't inherently incorrect, but it isn't inherently correct within the context that you used it. When it talks about it having more than 3 dimensions, it's in context to the spatial dimensions and not the temporal. A hyperspace is consistently stated in multiple sources to be a higher dimensional construct, a construct so large that it can encompass a universe, which is why when you go to a hyperspace, it is easier for you to travel across huge distances within space-time, because it acts as a higher dimensional shortcut. For example, if you were to transcend a fiction, you would be in a higher dimension than the fiction, and that you would view it as fiction, and then you'd be able to go from any point in the fiction to another point because you view it as a piece of paper and the distance in the fiction is irrelevant to you. When they talk about it being a hyperspace, the name is meant to be taken literally, as it's talking about it being hyper. It's an exaggeration to describe a bigger, better space. That's why it's called a hyperspace. The same with superspace and the likes. So it's not just talking about a dimension of just more than 3 dimensions. It's in reference to its spatial dimensions. That's not counting the temporal dimension. So you suppressing substantial evidence that goes against your narrative just to fit your narrative is already an appeal to motive fallacy, and it shows you don't understand science.
The universe is based on our universe, therefore it's only 4-dimensional.
Not only is this a hasty generalization fallacy because you're asserting that because something is based off of something, it inherently has the exact same properties, which is as fallacious in reasoning, but your own scan describes the universe as being something separate from the living world. It's describing a universe as a subset or a part of something bigger. And you already admitting that the universe is fourth dimensional already admits to the point that the living world, which contains the universe and the demon realm, as well as multiple other space-time continuums within the Dragon Ball's lower cosmology, would already be a higher dimensional construct. This is actually supported numerous times within the actual series, and there's nothing really contradicting this concept because the living world is greater than both the universe and the demon realm, as well as multiple other space-time continuums. So this would just be a hasty generalization fallacy, and it's just dumb. It just proves how stupid you are.
Afterlife is not 5-dimensional or above. The afterlife being said to be beyond the living world and being above it refers to how it's located above it, which is consistent with the Daisenshu saying that the universe is located beneath the afterlife. It's talking where they're physically located, not that the afterlife is 5-dimensional.
Now, this is actually a huge misconception. What the Daisenshu is describing is the macrocosm diagram Toriyama drew for his staff members to be able to understand and conceptualize the cosmology as well as the audience who's looking at the manga or the anime. What this is just a representation he made to be able to conceptualize the idea of the afterlife, and he literally states this by himself, and it's literally implied throughout the Daisenshu that it's just a representation to convey the idea. Now, your second argument shows that you have no inherent knowledge on Asian mythology and cosmology. When it talks about a realm being higher than a realm in Asian mythology, which Dragon Ball is definitely inherently objectively based off of, it talks about it being a higher plane of existence. This is apparent in religion, in cosmology, in mythology, in everything. It's not just talking about it being on top of it. It's not a physical, oh my god, it's not a physical placement that makes it on top. That's just an assumption. It's not talking about it being physically on top of it. It's talking about it being a higher plane of existence. That's the point of these kinds of poetic writing in Asian mythology. When it says a realm is beneath this realm, it's talking about it literally being transcended. You need to look at context and not just go off of the first paragraph you see. Plus, the translation you used is pretty trash because the so-called Japanese native took out the kanji for transcend. This is the best translation you can get out of this. It literally translates it with context. It's from a guy named Shinji who lives directly in Japan.
People use a non-canon board game that says that the afterlife is a higher dimension and claim it's valid because it's licensed, but that's not how canons work. Being licensed does not mean that something is canon. Many licensed works are rendered as non-canon. The same board game has completely different power levels and multiplayers, and therefore is vastly different from the show. It has no relevance to the manga, to the anime, to the video games, or any other Dragon Ball continuity for that matter.
Not only is this argument extremely stupid, but it also proves how ignorant you are. The RPG game guidebook actually states that it extrapolates its information from the anime and the manga. So you ignoring that part is just you appealing to motive again. First of all, you said being licensed doesn't inherently make it canon without even proving why. And then you go ahead to give like a stupid reason to say just because something is licensed doesn't mean it's canon, just because things could contradict. Well, the thing is that you're taking the statement from a game and not the game guidebook. The RPG game guidebook is a guidebook that is for this series. It is not just a game. The Boo's Fury you took is just a game. It could be contradicted, or it could have information that is just based off of headcanon or a misconception, while the guidebook directly states that its information is gotten from the anime and the manga, so this would disregard your statement. Also, the arguments you gave about the power levels and multipliers being different is just stupid because you don't realize that it's in context through the game mechanics and not the actual cosmology statements, which are actually stated to be gotten extrapolated from the actual Dragon Ball Z manga and anime, as well as the Daisenshu, which is literally implied because it's stated to extrapolate from a source books, which literally is the Daisenshu. You fail to realize this basic concept, and this just proves how overall ignorant you are.
The board game even makes the claim that King Kiema and his desk are bigger than the solar system, which is not true whatsoever in the show or any other Dragon Ball continuity. On top of this, in this board game, the universe is basically the Kaioshin realm, and Hell is the universe, so everything is completely different from the show.
Oh my fucking galaxies, bruh. This nigga's retarded. First of all, the King Enma's statement is pretty easy to explain, as if you're in a higher plane of existence, you would automatically be bigger or transcend things that are in a lower plane of existence. So it wouldn't be too out of stretch to say the King Enma's table is bigger than the entire solar system, because they literally give context as to why they're saying it is because he's in a next dimension or a higher plane of existence. Second of all, the argument you gave is just another appealing to the diagram, which I already explained as a representation. It doesn't even depict the universe as the Kaioshin realm. It's just a zoom in to show the universe's contents. It's not depicted as the Kaioshin realm. Second of all, I told you this is just a representation. It's not all actually the same. For example, Snake Way is stated or implied to be like 1,000,000 kilometers long, but it's actually hyperbolic in nature. Because if that was the case, the macrocosm would only be like about a couple million kilometers long, which is obviously not true. Also, heaven is stated to be as the same size as the universe, and is made to look like it takes up a huge portion of the afterlife. While if you look at the anime and the manga, or mostly the anime, this is made apparent that heaven is actually nothing in comparison to the afterlife, because when you are in the afterlife, you cannot see heaven. A universal sized body is so tiny and so infinitesimal in comparison to the afterlife that it literally cannot be seen. So, think about it really hard.
The lack of time does not make the afterlife beyond the concept of dimensionality and outerversal, which would require it to be beyond infinite dimensional constructs. Lacking a fourth dimension is not proof of anything other than the afterlife being potentially three-dimensional, considering it's still referred to as a dimension and a cosmos, which means that it has space.
I tell you guys, this guy is disingenuous. You guys don't listen to me. He literally just showed the definition for low outer and not outerversal. He's literally strawmanning the argument. I wasn't making the analogy that the afterlife was low outer. I was making the analogy that it's outerversal. And no, it doesn't just lack time. It lacks the concept of time, which I'll show you in a scan later on. Now, on to your next argument. You said that it's referred to as a dimension, which means it has space, but that's a name fallacy. Just because something is referred to as a dimension doesn't inherently make it a spatial construct. I can literally make an outerversal realm, and then within the context of perspective of a character, it could be called a dimension. It doesn't make it a spatial construct. For example, if I place a character in an outerversal realm and he's like, oh, what is this, a dimension? He's like talking in context to his perspective. It doesn't inherently make it a spatial construct. And especially if there's consistency providing that it is an outerversal realm, just going off of the fact that it's called a dimension would be a name fallacy. Also, you don't need to be beyond infinite dimensional constructs to be outerversal. You just need to be above the objective abstract concepts of time and space, and not subjective mental concept, but objective abstract concepts of time and space behind all dimensionalities. That's what makes you outerversal. You don't necessarily need an infinite dimensional cosmology to do so. That's wrong. It shows that you don't know anything about scaling. You're stupid.
That's assuming the afterlife has no time to begin with, as Toriyama has referred to it as a time-space, so there is evidence for both it having time and it not having time. Regardless of which is true, the afterlife would be three-dimensional or four-dimensional.
Going off of a hyperbolic exaggeration of Snake Way's size in order to make the assertion that the afterlife has space and time is just extremely disingenuous, as you didn't prove why that would make it have space and time, and also it wouldn't really matter since you're going off of a hyperbolic exaggeration of Snake Way's size. Based on the diagram, it's shown that Snake Way takes up the entire portion of the afterlife's diameter in context to the diagram, in which if you apply into logical sense, it would be infinite in size as well, going logically as it is a part of the infinite afterlife. Also, the afterlife is stated to lack the concept of time in the Dragon Ball Super Exciting Guidebook, which would inherently mean it lacks the concept of space, which is intertwined with the concept of time, because that's how space-time works in general. Also, the afterlife is stated to be an enlightened place in Buddhism and in Buddhist mythology, Asian mythology. It's made to understand that when you are enlightened, you are basically in the state of nirvana, in which you transcend all possible concepts, notions, and reality. So that would make you outerversal based off of that. Also, the afterlife contains metaphysics, in which metaphysics is in context to things that transcend the very concept of reality, concepts that govern reality like time and space, etc. So that would make it outerversal. The video is getting too long already, so I'm gonna post a part 2 to this. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and follow for more.